Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 13th session in our Fluid Vessels series. My name is Eli McLaren. I'm the director of the Montreal International Poetry Prize. Our session this evening features more of the finalists from the 2024 competition. We're excited to be publishing their poems in our next anthology, the Montreal Poetry Prize Anthology 2024, which will appear next month with Vehicule Press. Our program tonight is an international one featuring Medrie Purdham in Canada, Kelly Rowe in the US, and Tim Loveday in Australia. Thank you so much for joining us. The host of today's session is my friend and colleague, Professor Carmen Faye, who teaches Romantic poetry at McGill University. Our session today is scheduled for about an hour. As usual, I will remind everyone to mute their microphones during the introductions and the readings. We'll have a few minutes for questions and comments from the audience at the end. Please keep your questions brief and concise so that we can keep the focus on the aims and practices of our three poet guests who are the reason why we're gathered here this evening. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Carmen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carmen Faye Mathes. I'm an associate professor at McGill in the Department of English, and I'm here in Jajouke, Montreal, on the unceded territories of the Anishinaabeg and Haudenosaunee, including the Kanien'kehá:ka, who are the custodians of this land and its waterways. I'm delighted to be introducing our three speakers, Medrie Purdham, Kelly Rowe, and Tim Loveday, whose poems were finalists for the 2024 cycle of the Montreal International Poetry Prize. I'm going to introduce each poet, and I hope you won't mind my using your first names. Medrie Purdham is the author of the celebrated collection Little Housewolf, which has been called, and I believe this too, some of the finest lyric poetry being written today. Scalar transformations animate these poems as small things like thimbles and insects become vast and arresting, sublime in the romantic sense and profoundly matrilineal. In my favorite poem, a tree is rent by a piano in a spectacular childbirth. In one of the two poems, not one, but two, that were finalists for this year's Montreal International Poetry Prize, the poet speaker stands with her son before Lucy, or Australopithecus afarensis, our first mother, at the Natural History Museum in New York. The poem is coiled like DNA with ingenious formal precision, a meditation on maternal care and geological time, evolution and memory. The other finalist poem, Are You Still Happy with Your House, gave me a chance to show off my insider knowledge of Regina real estate when we read it together at one of our prize meetings. Medrie, who holds a PhD in English from McGill University, is Associate Professor of English at the University of Regina, Treaty 4. She has won many awards, including the 2022 City of Regina Award at the Saskatchewan Book Awards for Little Housewolf. Her work has been anthologized in the Best Canadian Poetry Series 3 times. In 2022, she served as a juror for the Montreal International Poetry Prize, and this cycle, the 2024 competition, we're excited to welcome her as a contributor and now speaker. Welcome, Medrie.
All right. Thank you, Carmen, for that very kind introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be with you today. I'm reading from Regina, Saskatchewan on Treaty 4. This is the unceded territory of the Nahiawak, the Anishinaabeg, the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota people, and also the homeland of the Métis Nation. Our host Carmen and I actually used to teach together here. So it's nice to see Carmen tonight, and I'm so happy to be reading with Kelly and Timothy, whose contest poems I admired. Thanks to the Montreal International Poetry Prize community for their kind reception of the work and for the chance to read tonight. I brought 3 poems. The first is a competition poem, and it's called Are You Still Happy with Your Home? This one is based on a question that our former realtor asks regularly in the emails she sends in this sort of professional prolongation of our relationship. And what I've found over the years is that the more I ask myself, am I happy? The more it turns into existential doubt. So unfortunately, the poem has a kind of, it records this strange effect where if you ask the same thing too often, you shade off into doubt. Are you still happy with your home? For our realtor who asks. She taught us once what soffits were. She keeps in touch. Sends us each a card on the other's birthday. Gives us things to plant. Supermoon pumpkin, midnight snack tomato. Ices her own photorealistic likeness onto sugar cookies. Probes our existential state. Annually, we consume her in effigy with mulled wine and hesitation. No, forms my reply. We can't be happy. The house has failed. We dismantled our child's alchemy lab, and now it seems it never was. No curio bottles, cuttings or barks, unguents. There's nothing brewing inside anything anyone ever called an alembic. There's no perplexity over untransmuted things. Where have the essences gone? I never ask. When she measured the backyard, it was not to assess the space we'd have for running around in costume, cotton batting, and linen pants. We never enacted the 1912 cyclone, never pretended to bash the windows out of the legislature, never shrieked for joy. We had green space, and in time, we're supposed to turn it into ourselves, full bloom, that's all. But the small rituals these grounds hosted were indebted human goods. We lulled ourselves to sleep with minor stories. In the hatchery that's gone, no eggs were moved by their own internal radiance to draconic self-revelation. No dragon pets. No morning where a child believed the cat said, rock and roll, or where he posed pregnancy questions. Did you call yourself I or we? The robot whose job it is to make paper clips would eventually turn all matter into a paperclip factory, or so I read. Were we right to overturn our piece of earth, and will we therefore bury ourselves eventually? In the beginning, she said the snow deepening on our roof was good. It was a sign. It showed us how much of our energy we'd keep, how much we'd lose. Thank you. And the second poem I brought is called Da Vinci Mommy Blog, and it's a poem I wrote after a very particular period in our lives where for 4 months my son pretended to be Leonardo da Vinci. And this happened because we had a traveling exhibit here at the Science Center on Da Vinci, and it really caught the imagination of a lot of children in the city. And many we're talking about it years after, which I discovered when I took my son to a dance lesson. And the moms sitting at one table were talking about nothing whatsoever, just small talk. And then I went to pick up my son at his table, and his 8-year-old friend was saying, I don't know, I think Da Vinci would be very proud of modern people. And I wanted in on that conversation, but the kids wouldn't have me. So instead, I went home and wrote this poem. So this is a poem in sort of two voices, which might make it more of a poem for the page than for delivery. But it's on one hand, the speaker is talking directly to Da Vinci, and on the other hand, recording bits and pieces of her child's game about Da Vinci. Da Vinci Mommy Blog. If I could be the tour guide of our time, Da Vinci, I'd jockey to be the one to reveal humankind on the moon and that incorruptible footprint in a place without weather. My little son loves to hear the part where the great bird, the kite, settled itself on your infant mouth, as though it were a gate of entry. But no, the moon is obvious. Maybe the ocean floor is the place to start. The lightless, nameless part of creation. The dead sperm whale coming apart to the nips of the meter-long sea lice that would be albino if the word in that place could mean. These are the things we can really look upon. When my son plays his Da Vinci game, he offers me parts. You can be the Sally, the companion, he says, and I'll leave you the Mona Lisa when I die. Or you can be Andrea Verrocchio, the teacher. Oh, but then I would have to surpass you. You can be Da Vinci's, I mean my, mummy. Sorry, I digress. Photography. I want you to see the macro photographs of the lives of snails, of the insides of instruments, the cello that is otherwise a ship's cabin, the trumpet that is otherwise a dwarven ruin. He started carrying a notebook because he saw yours. He thought your anatomical drawings were inventions. He said of the uterus, "Look, I invented a place to keep folded up babies." He stroked his chin at the scale model of your ideal city and said, "Interesting, my ideal city seems to be a city for mice." You should try planes, trains, funiculi. You should go on a Ferris wheel or the drop of doom. You should lose a loved possession on the tracks and have it restored to you by a triumphant concierge. I have to tell you how he cried over your brass horse, your monument to the Sforza family. As you, he considered the question of whether it could be done rearing up at that scale. He saw it as a distraction from his research. But when the invading French fired at the clay armature, he crumpled on the floor of the gallery, crying in real life, "I failed you, Sforza. Sforza, I failed." Modern technologies of war? I doubt you'd find sublimity in them, despite their power. Your tank is as quaint as a teapot and can only move on perfectly smooth ground. That you are an awkward imaginer of destruction is what I love best, Da Vinci. When he heard that they used the brass that was meant for your equine monument instead for bullets to repel the French, he broke. "How can something be both a horse and a bullet?" he asked. "How can a bullet be made of horse?" "It's okay," we said. "We said you were a great man, Da Vinci." He said I died in the King of France's arms. Thank you. And the last poem I brought today was also a contest poem, and it is called "In Front of Lucy, Our First Mother, My Son Has a Lavish Nosebleed," and it recounts the time I attempted to take my child to the Natural History Museum in New York because he had a dream at that time to be a night guard in a museum, but that dream was heavily predicated on the idea that everything would come alive at night, like in the movie Night at the Museum with Ben Stiller, which was his favorite at the time. So we took him in on this kind of pilgrimage and showed him the T-Rex skeleton called Rexy, who romps around like a big puppy throughout the museum in the film. But as children are, he was completely unimpressed with the thing that we thought he would be impressed with. But instead, he had this lavish event in front of the Australopithecus. So this poem is called "In Front of Lucy, Our First Mother, My Son Has a Lavish Nosebleed, Australopithecus afarensis, Natural History Museum, New York." We wait for platelets to cluster, and I think it's the other way around. I mean, we're not religious, and she's not the Virgin Mary, and my boy's not a wonderstruck urchin in some verdant valley, host to a serpentine river. It should be the stone mother who, weeping, bleeds, and the wayfaring boy who stands with a blank face. Lucy, named for the one in the sky with diamonds, is a vision. The small toboggan of her jaw, her ribs and pelvic girdle are all in pieces. She tells an osseous story of uprightness and of being found. I dab at my child's expressive nose, which on seeing an ancient mother calls, "Care for me." He signals from his own troubled membranes, aches for her. I shiver because every family tree is unbroken, every one. Happy, my grandmother thought me kind. She never knew how I nursed my selfish whims. Everything that ever touched her left her before she forgot how to mother. She held our family's latest baby, singing about shaking dreams from the sleep tree, the last song she remembered. She died without me. I die to think of it. And now it's me singing about shaking dreams from the sleep tree, the last song she remembered before she forgot how to mother. She held our family's latest baby, nursed my selfish whims. Everything that ever touched her left her happy. My grandmother thought me kind. She never knew how I ached for her. I weep because every family tree is unbroken. Everyone calls care for me. My child signals it from his own troubled membranes. I dab at his expressive nose, which on seeing an ancient mother tells a cartilaginous story of all rightness and of being found. The small toboggan of her jaw, her pelvic girdle are all in pieces. Lucy, named for the one in the sky with diamonds, is a vision. The wayfaring boy stands with a blank face, host to a red serpentine river. It should be the stone mother who weeping bleeds. My boy's not some wonderstruck urchin in some verdant valley. We're not religious, and she's not the Virgin Mary. We wait for platelets to cluster, and I think it's the other way around. Thank you.
Okay. When I read a poem I really love, explains the poet Kelly Rowe, I don't want to know anything about the poet. I want what I already have from the poem itself, to feel connected to another person in a large and sometimes frightening or lonely world. End quote. Kelly's finalist poem for the Montreal International Poetry Prize, You Say You've Never Left Home, is an invocation and an offering of such a connection. Home is family and nation, spaces where being an outsider on the inside, a stepchild, a migrant, also means that on the inside, the threat of expulsion lives as in a splinter lodged in your throat. In precise, evocative language, Rowe's poem is a devastating meditation on the everyday precarity and trauma of living under repressive regimes, where ideologies of exclusion and elimination exist in tandem with the human impulse to care for and protect those we love. Now, because we do want to know more about the poet who draws us into these profound spaces, it is my pleasure to introduce Kelly, award-winning poet and volunteer attorney on behalf of undocumented immigrants based in Flagstaff, Arizona. Kelly earned her MFA in English from the University of Iowa and her JD from Emory. She's the author of 2 chapbooks, Flying South on the Back of a Dove, 2019, and Childbed Fever, 2022. Her 2023 book, Rise Above the River, won the Able Muse Book Award and was a finalist for the Arizona Book Award for poetry. Kelly, we are so lucky to have you here to read for us today.
Wow, Carmen, thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I'll try to live up to it. And thank you both, all really, the whole committee of the International Prize for putting on this event and acknowledging the finalists. I am going to read 5 poems, possibly 6, from the new manuscript I'm working on. It is called Foreign, and it's a book about travel, both literal travel and the various journeys we take, and also what it means to be foreign. So the first poem I'd like to read was one I wrote for my clients after I was overseas and had an experience with immigration in an Eastern European country that made me once more understand better what it must be like for them. It's called Out of Office Reply. I came to this island to rest, but will reply to urgent messages like yours. You see, I've also known what it means to stand in line in the dark and early morning, waiting for a locked door to open, coughing, cold, stamping feet. When the cat scratching in the courtyard speaks more fluently than you, when the clerk can't find your name on her list, when you have no fingerprints, when all you have is your file spilling across the desk and the smile that in your own lost country proves that you exist. See the grapes and oranges piled high on the stand outside the little grocery. They are a burning heaven, and I'm telling you to reach out, stretch, touch, take. Yes, you'll be burned, even arrested, but just once, taste the swelling fruit, the skin, the juice. Another kind of travel that thank you. Another kind of travel that I explore in my manuscript is travel through war. And like many people my age, I had a father who came home from World War II, very damaged, but never spoke about his experiences. And so this, we had trouble understanding why he had this explosive temper at times. So this poem is called PTSD. The problem is rebirth, like travel, follows an unpredictable course. What does it mean to be made to walk again in fields of lavender that you remember flattened, mined, burning, smoke stench rising? Having put your pack of evil down some farmer's well, you begin again, following what seems to be a cleared road, new language, new wife, new world, all your sins forgotten. You even hear some mornings when you wake a strange bird outside your window calling you to joy. But often your hand still reaches for the sheathed knife, the only friend you trusted in that war without end. Amen. You sigh, try not to, but still lick with pleasure at the memory of the gasp, the low gurgle when you slipped it in. Old damn shad. Um, I thank you. I'd like to read another poem about war, and when I read it, you'll see why I think it's an appropriate poem for this point in time. It is called Sisu. It's set in Finland. Many of the poems in the manuscript are set in Finland, a country where I've lived at different times in my life, a country I really love. And sisu is sort of hard to translate. It's a Finnish word and it means taking action against the odds or being stalwart in the face of a great challenge. And one other thing that's helpful in understanding the poem is that during the Winter War, the Finns often fought on skis and they wore white uniforms, all white, to camouflage themselves against the snow. Sisu. In the Winter War, the Finns, outnumbered 3-1, held off the Russians for months in the forests along the border. The enemy tanks, mired deep in mud and snow, stalled, and out of the trees and down the white hills flew angels on skis, guns like harps slung across their back. Um, another kind of journey that we take is one through illness. And it's hard to imagine a more difficult journey than that through a child's serious illness. So this poem is called In the Children's Ward. Now you have traveled far from home, close to, into a war zone. The guide who is leading you over the mountains may know his way or not. Traveling companions suddenly disappear. And always stretching out below you, battlefields. Is your child's breathing labored? Ask the nurse to open the window. In the growing winter dark, a circle of snow-covered firs offers you the rustle of taffeta party dresses. She could still grow up. Now the trees are leaning in the window, and one begins to sing. The aria rises in the cold room. It could fill your child's lungs, wring a drop of perfect love from you, stop anybody's heart. Um, and I'd like to read a poem next that I hope is about that moment of connection that people from very different worlds can have, people from different cultures, people from different countries. Um, in my work, I see so much hatred for people who are different in some way from us. And I love those moments when different people connect. So the title is Winter Swimming, which is a thing in Finland. So um, the old man who lives alone returns from the sea where the ice is breaking up, stepping in bare feet through the snow, all that illuminates a sunless afternoon. An ugly man, he throws his shoulders back, raises a pocked face and puffy breasts as if unwrapping a bouquet of tulips in a warm room so they can breathe. At the edge of the deep end, the teacher braiding the foreign girl's hair jerks back her head. The girl cries out. Her eyes meet the old man's gaze, and he nods. Yes, he can see she, too, was dreaming of swimming out under the frozen surface of the sea, out through all the small islands, out past Åland, of becoming a starfish, jellyfish, abalone, a part of all the waving, silent life beneath the ice. And she could swear the old man speaks her own spared dialect of the unlovely, the unloved, that he too is an anglerfish who lives deep, who carries his own lantern through the bright gardens blooming in the fathomless murk. Um, I think that's my time. So I didn't read the poem that was a finalist, but it's there on the website if you'd like to read it. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Kelly. That was wonderful.
Thanks.
All right, our final speaker today is Tim Loveday. Tim Loveday is an award-winning poet from New South Wales whose work explores gender and violence, class and climate catastrophe, disability, creativity, and identity. A PhD candidate in creative writing at the University of Melbourne, he is focusing his research on the mass radicalization of young men through the quote-unquote manosphere and the limits and potentials of reinterpreting this phenomenon through satire. From toxic masculinity to mass media and colonial violence, these are issues that are likewise framed, perhaps in order to be reframed, in Tim's finalist poem for the Montreal International Poetry Prize, which is titled, and so I'm going to read it in this way and hope that it will be helpful. So the title is square bracket, all caps, trailer, square bracket, mission, square bracket, small caps, masculine, square bracket, colon, impossible. Trailer, mission, masculine, impossible. As you can tell, to take this poem as a series of words, letters, punctuation marks is to confront normative reading practices head on. The square brackets are at once asides and impositions. They simultaneously complicate and simplify the line's expressed meanings. Tim has called poetry, quote, closer to visual art than it is to, say, fiction or nonfiction or even music, end quote. Such poetry, writes Tim, is, quote, a small window, a world framed by just a few stanzas, end quote. Or for us, perhaps, by many, many square brackets. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your work with us today, Tim.
Thank you so much for that incredible introduction, Carmen. I am so honored to be reading amongst these phenomenal poets, many of whom I'm sort of learning as I go. Obviously, I'm well over the pond in Australia, and it's a completely different sort of poetry ecosystem here. But I'm just so in awe of all of your work. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for organising Carmen and Eli. As I guess the title of that first poem indicates, it's quite difficult to read. There is upwards of 100 brackets used throughout the poem itself. So I might avoid trying to read it to an audience today. Instead, I'll read you some work that maybe is a bit more appropriate for a public performance. So the first poem is titled False Levitation. I guess I'm coming to a particular point in my career where the decision between being an academic, not being an academic is becoming quite pressing in my life. I'm sure many people can resonate with that feeling or have resonated with that feeling at some point or another in terms of their craft. And it's been on my mind a lot. And I guess questions of capitalism, late stage capitalism have been reoccurring as well. So most of the poems sort of fluctuate around those themes today. So False Levitation. There's a quote at the start of this poem by Harry Khusru in the book Red Pill, which is, "Stop asking life to be a poem." I contemplate the edgelordness of never touching the pool tiles, of swimming in a never-ending loop in which one direction could be a substitute for the other. Wet slap and gasp for air, wet Sunday of sky, air bubbles rising and exploding as if speech bubbles so small no one can read them. Thinking about the poetry book about pools, about swimming in the not so deep end, I pinch my nose and open my mouth and suck, suck, suck. Being a poet is like overhearing a bad joke at a party and then repeating it ad nauseum. To others I repeat. Return to the pool for the comfort of being engrossed in something, the salinity of the incidental. Email to the editor applauding his tenure, which includes a typo. I heard on the grapevine that you are leaving us. Exit through the turnstile. I am standing outside the pool complex in the middle of the road trying to ad hoc a scenic shot. A sign stapled to a tree by the pool reads, "Your expression of love holds more value than any currency." The sign below it offers artist spaces for $70 a day, amor vitsi amia. My friend with the market stall says, "Animals keep coming to my house to die. First a cat, then a chameleon. Yesterday a butterfly landed on her hand and perished. No amount of chlorine will get the stench out. I blow my nose to clear deep end from my limbic system. How is poetry going? A moth in snot, so watery I struggle to identify it. Alia icta eklas. Air bubbles in the way a certain line becomes uncertain. Watery concrete after it is dry is not watery concrete, but a water surface. Break the membrane and find direction through stroke. Try to dismantle the cycle by following it. Blue lick of breach and breathless. Too close, man. Get the fuck out of my lane, man. Register concrete steps packed with citizens. Bodily maxims. Waterboard your abs. Dye this water with my shadow. I am orca is audience orchestra. I am on my back again. Wet Sunday of sky, a crane looping past a window. The moderator chants armed resistance, occupation to unoccupy. Know your lane, man, love it. Acta non verba. I budget swimmingly into the grant application. Blue till the end then, till the permeable weight bearer, caveat emptor, market continuity, marketplace, a book titled The Room Where Dracula Sucks His Own Dick, with the subtitle, He Breaks into Her House and Sucks His Own Dick in the Attic. But who can afford an attic in this controlled climate? Cosplay as a traitor in the sauna, then banish us to a deep state, aka Coburg Leisure Centre. Use an expired healthcare card for your not-so-aqua profunda. Deep throat a question about classism. Ism on my face every time I receive a rejection. I am on my back again, fluctuate net majira, backstroke and signs everywhere but above me. A chicken-shaped cloud conducting unpaid labor by incorporating other cloud-like things. Drag this object called corpus to that subject bubbler. Cut the metal. How community activism saved this pool from closure. Now I use this as an excuse to poet. I prefer the term refusing capitals. My arms crane. Is that what we're working towards? Maintenance. A big net scraping silt soup. Lay by the pool. Lay by the journal. False levitation above a QR code. Vini vidi vici. My entry lineated by my own resistance to persist. The lifeguard flirts towards me. I gasp for air. He is a poem but isn't sinking. I am trying to grip a surface that was never lineated. Watch me dog's dinner this treading water business. To write the poem is to accept the condition of swimming within a set plane. Suck, suck, suck. Here's a wet blanket, aka a dryish towel. The question, why have it at all? It's an insertion of ambiguity. The break asks the swimmer to make more with what is. Thank you. So the last line is taken from an incredible Australian poet called Lucy Vann, who said at an event once, when asked what was the function of the line break, said, it's an insertion of ambiguity. The line asks the poem to do more with what it is. And I always thought that was a really powerful description of what a line break in a poem could be. So the next poem we're going to read is slightly more focused on, I guess, the institution, the university. This is called Aka Light. Let's read it. Che Guevara is white and wearing a shirt with his face on it. Mansplaining Derrida or Adorno, a hat like your grandfather used to wear, though at least this man knew something about the Great War too. This Che hasn't worked out how to borrow a book from the Baylor Library yet, and his diary suggests a paranoid persona, not a propensity toward engines. See, he is trying to build something here, the exact proportions of which were lost with Da Vinci, or was it Dan Brown? Your dog, likewise, is a sommelier of poop, can snack twice on the idea of self, but never quite muster a technology. The part of the rewriting in present tense hasn't become present yet. Present to self, presence, the sort of gift that keeps giving you anxiety. Untangle a tongue, but still the memory of knots. You are me, are him, in a sense of difference, though there is nothing differential about this. We both hate him, hate you. Just join the environmental society and hewn a cherry vape with someone just as old and stupid as you will be. Imagine dealing with humanity every day. Imagine people turn to you, gasp. Imagine mansplaining, but this time end up with an Abaniker, a PowerPoint, and a briefcase. Imagine the classroom gets that much smaller and becomes an office. Thank you. The last poem I'll read is titled "A Dog Dies on My Street Today." The title sort of speaks for itself. I wrote this for a commission for an event called Is Everything Fucked? Run through a quite popular series of bookstores in Naarm, Melbourne. Everything feels pretty fucked, if you can't tell from my poems already. Apologies, I suspect Australians swear slightly more than other people internationally, but a dog dies on my street today. I exit the pool to a voicemail from my partner to call my neighbor. To so sorry and fuck. And is there anything we can do? To philosophize and atomize and apostrophize and capitalize. Tail wagging, harbinger of bugle and pant. Crying face emoji. Someone once told me dogs don't smile, not the muscle nor the disposition for it. Us poets are looking for signs. Woolworths on a corner. I bargain with the bucket for a cheaper bouquet of flowers. I am dripping. I am thinking about the patterns laced across watery concrete. I am still wearing my boardies. I want to say they buoyed me, that I slipped on this spandex skin and floated. But this, it was my God-forsaken muscles. Each stroke, blue wedge of sunlight and the sensation of drowning. You welcomed me to the street. Do you remember that? No, of course not. Death answers so few questions, and yet it answers them all. Besides, you were a dog. What do you know of language or love? What is light but a bounding door open, door closed? To think we can tell the quality of the poem by the writer's dress code. I pay what I have to. Leave watery footprints. Leave the bouquet by the front door. Make note of the posters on your mother's front gate. No war, clean energy. She is in hospital now. The decision to end you came from the ward. Nearby, a couple laughs with all the pent-up audacity of two young people giving a language to love. Nearby, the sun surprises me. Nearby, the burning fugue of a joint, white slither of a stranger's belly. I am on my back again. The grassy patch near where you did your business. Sniffed asses. Oak leaves are snowflakes against the wide expanse of sky. Birds are notation if pageless, illiterate. There are no nests here, but too many fucking twigs. Fuck this. That pink rope of tongue and the first lick of my palm, you did smile, didn't you? 20 months back and still counting, a third of your life, and if I'm lucky, a 50th of mine. Meanwhile, the Russian spy whale Vladimir is murdered. Meanwhile, genocide on subscription, a father cradles a puddle of flesh. I try to scroll to the end, never get there. Photos of you crouching by a bride as 5 bridesmaids try to patch you. A child with her slender arms wrapped around your ribcage. WhatsApp with its timing. I read how you sunk your teeth into your mother's forearm. You were going for a whippet, weren't you? So unlike you, the neighbors agreed. So unlike the boy with the chestnut eyes and winged back ears. What to make of this huge, inexplicable mess? Why is this grief suddenly mine? I am late to teaching craft. I am late to applying a scalpel to the poem. Everything is fucked, and then it isn't, and then it is. I've spent too much time trying to vaporize the sun, to neuter some part of this, to murder another. Slim muzzled boy, red and white, with a huge brimming smile. You bounced when you walked, you swam through the air. To think sometime in the future, I will hardly remember you. I don't swipe on for the tram, fear my students will see me. What the hell? I am too old to think this vulnerability is enough. Today, can someone else read, I say, or does anyone else have something to read? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. So we have a little time now for Q&A. And so if you would like to ask a question, I think using the raise hand emoji is probably the easiest for me to see. And yeah, we can keep the chat going as well. Eli, please.
Great. So thank you so much to the poets. Um, my question is deceptively simple. Um, when does when does finding your voice when you're writing a poem, when does that become um, sympathy for the other? And and if I could just sort of explain the question a little bit, Tim, with your last poem, what I found moving was suddenly understanding someone's grief that their dog has died. So what seems to start as a rant turns into actually quite a moving sympathy for someone else's life. So how does this happen for the three of you in poetry? Sitting down and starting to find your voice, to think your thoughts, to clear some space for what you want to say, and then how does that become then thinking about your child's imagination, Medrie, or Kelly thinking about your client's immigration experience, or how does that action of finding your voice sort of turn miraculously into this exercise of sympathy?
That is not such a simple question. I um I would say that I don't actually give a lot of thought to my voice because I'm not very interested in my voice and my own life. And so right from the beginning, I usually want to be writing about someone else because they're usually more interesting. Um, so maybe that isn't really an answer, but almost a little bit of a rejection of the question. So, um, Medri, or um, uh, what would you say?
Kelly, I agree with you. That's a very difficult question. It's a very difficult question. Thinking about it a little bit, I think that deciding to speak at all is deciding what to say, and deciding what to say is deciding what's important. So, in that sense, I think using your voice is always an exercise in sympathy or an attempt to know someone outside yourself. The poet B.P. Nichols talks about language as language exits from the self. And I think maybe that is one way of thinking about it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a challenging question. I was sort of listening to it and trying to process it. Maybe I'm the sort of contrarian here. I think voice is sort of my point of origin in all writing. I think I my introduction to poetry was predominantly narrative poetry, and most of what I write now is narrative poetry. So sort of POV voice uh, is how I write everything. I can't finish a first line unless I'm certain of the voice in which the poem's going to be written. And I think I'm going to sort of reverse construct this question, which is that I do sort of the reverse to what you're suggesting, Eli, which is that actually part of the craft of writing the poem to me is to convince the reader that I haven't already made that point of connection. That actually it's a deeply empathetic experience I have for others that spurs the poem in the first place. So it's the poem certainly escalates that position, and it certainly it feeds into it, and I will find myself more moved by the experience of other people in through the process of writing. But part of it is convincing the reader that what I'm engaging in is a rant that sort of transmutes uh, into an act of empathy, I suppose.
So maybe my question wasn't a very good question at all. Maybe it was sort of more of an observation that I really feel this happening in your work, the three of you. Um, that yeah, it's so much more than just one person finding their voice. Um, so bravo.
Hmm.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely, Vladislav, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. Okay, so as long as we don't have much time, so I would ask one question for all three readers, and this would be probably how would they characterize, in some words, the interrelation of theme, symbolism, and imagery within the frameworks of their poetic experience? So this is my question. Thank you.
Well, I would say that often I'm trying to work with a metaphor where the whole poem is one metaphor. And then obviously within that, the imagery has to support that metaphor. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question. In other words, I try not to ever just have a list of random images that I think, wow, that's cool. That could really impress people. Every image I try to choose to support the structure of the poem. So that
Thank you. Wonderful.
I'm not an academic, so I'm not sure how
That's not about that.
okay.
Thank you so much.
But I think Medrie or Tim, you all might be able to give a better answer to Jen.
I can try to stumble my way through this one. I thank you for your question. It is an important question. I think that your phrasing of it, maybe it puts front and center the visual imagination, because I was thinking that the things I was focused on in these poems were not quite those things, but rather sound and music. But when I come back to the importance of linking theme and image and symbol, I think the challenge that the poem offers to the poet is to try to take something that's understood with a sense of particularity and communicate it to the reader, which is actually quite difficult. So, for example, I'm obviously drawing on very autobiographical experiences that are tied for me to very particular images. The image of my child outside on the deck making little bundles of weeds and things to use in his alchemical experiments. It has to communicate to the reader. And so I think there's always a kind of simplification that has to happen, a sort of transmuting that has to happen in poetry so that the reader can take the particular data of someone else's experience and understand it in their own way.
So the interrelation of descriptive and visual imagery, like the evolution of one into another, for you means the simplification.
It does, because I think of things that connote to me personally, and they won't connote to a reader. I was thinking the other day about a cape that my mother made me, and the pockets were made from a dress of my grandmother's. And that's so evocative to me, but I could not write about it and just name that thing and expect it to communicate to another person. I'd have to find a formula. And I guess poetry is about finding that formula.
Yes, surely. And reflectivity is sort of life of a poem beyond the birth from poet. That's true. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just to sort of reiterate that point, one of the, I guess, theories that I teach my students, which is typically used in sort of narrative nonfiction, is the ladder of abstraction relating hyper-specific detail in one's life, but as the poet's sort of role in its, I guess, hyper focus on images or recurring images. And I'm sure us all as, poets would have that experience, such as the pocket, where we just become hyper fixated in our lives over particular ideas, images that become sort of detached from their meaning or other people's readings of them. And I think part of the function of the poetry more broadly, just to reinforce Medrie's point, is to reconnect them with their broader, larger meanings. I also have a habit of saying to my students, never write about love, sex, or death, because they'll end up being there anyway. Which is, I suppose, that they're sort of the underpinning images of all writing to some extent, and to write about them explicitly is unnecessary. They will pop their heads up. So that's my my answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that question, Vladislav. It was very generative. And I think Martin maybe has a quick one. We just have 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, I have a quick one indeed that absolutely does not justice to the depth of the prior questions. Medrie, Little Housewolf is a fantastic book, but it accumulates dust on my shelf for a couple of years now. I was wondering, is there a new book coming out? And likewise, Tim, where are you going in that regard? Kelly has read from a new manuscript. Yeah, is that also coming forth in book form? I would like to know what you have prepared for the future.
Thank you for asking, Martin. I'm not a fast writer, so I don't know if I'm most of the way towards a manuscript, but I like to think that I am. I think I'm maybe 2/3 of the way through a new book. And my 2 contest poems did not come from Little Housewolf, so there's a start right there. I am working on a book that it's hard to explain what it's about, because I feel like in the world there are poem-shaped poets and there are book-shaped poets, and I don't think I'm a book-shaped poet. I think I'm someone who gathers together a bunch of material and then reinterprets it so as to decide what it's about and sort of writes to that idea then. But for a long time, I was working on a set of poems that had to do with the Rubik's Cube, actually. I felt some cognitive effects of long COVID that didn't serve me very well. And for a long time, I had trouble thinking and expressing myself. And in that time, one of the things my doctor recommended to me, treating my condition like a concussion, was that I try to burn new pathways in my brain. And so I learned the Rubik's Cube, and I learned to speak Hindi a little bit. And I went back to the piano, and I tried to learn all these new things. And so I tried to write out of those experiences, and also to use those experiences as metaphors for the larger process of trying to reclaim myself. So I put together a chapbook called The Solve, which was about trying to solve my poor brain through the Rubik's Cube. And I guess that would be sort of at the heart of the new manuscript that's evolving.
So I never say I'm finished with a book, but I think I am a book-shaped poet. It was such an interesting way of putting that, Medrie. And I have been working on this manuscript for quite a while, but I'm starting to send it out. Who knows? It's a little bit different. It's set in a small Baltic country that, people may or may not be able to relate to. We'll see. But fingers crossed. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would agree. I sort of think of myself as a book-shaped poet, which I love. That's my new favorite expression. I will repeat that ad nauseum all day and for the next week. Yes, the poems I read today are predominantly from a collection I've been working on for a while called E Statement. Once again, the brackets, the E is in brackets, the ment is in brackets, so it just says state. And the sort of themes in that are reoccurring. The themes that you heard today are reoccurring in that collection. I'm probably 2/3-ish through, I would say. I have a sort of conception as the whole. And I'm also shopping around at the moment a collection called Your Father Was a Bastard, which is slightly more Australiana, although it comes from the film The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Ugly sort of famously says your father's bastard and his father was a bastard. Yes. So if there's any publishers in the room, please contact me. Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm doing in terms of the world. Hopefully, it will see the light of day soon enough.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to our poets for your time, for your poetry, for everything you bring to us and to the world. Thank you to everyone who was here celebrating with us today. And go forth, enjoy the day, Tim. Enjoy your evenings, Kelly and Medrie. And thank you again.